What's up, guys? Welcome to the Powerline Podcast. I'm the founder and host of this podcast. My name is Ryan Lucas. I thank you guys for joining me today. If you are a first-time listener, thanks for joining, man. This is dope. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for joining in. If you're a longtime listener and follower, I appreciate you. I thank you so much for your support. All right, jumping right in. Working Athlete and Powerline Podcast have teamed up to give you guys an exclusive deal on all Working Athlete and Wilderness Athlete products. These are supplements of the highest quality. And man, I've been taking these things for, probably 3 months now. And just they're a company that's doing things for us. That's what I really love about them. Not only are they doing things for us, the workers, the blue collar workers in the industry, the outdoors men and women, but they're also using the most highest quality ingredients in their products. I love their stuff. Give it a try. If you want to try their stuff out, get on wildernessathlete.com or workingathlete.com and use the code Powerline Podcast at checkout for 20% off. That's Powerline Podcast at checkout for 20% off. Make sure you use the code. It's been brought to my attention that some of you out there are buying their stuff and not getting the discount, not using the code. So use the code Powerline Podcast at checkout for 20% off all Wilderness Athlete and Working Athlete products. All right. Since 1952, Tallman Equipment has been trusted by linemen for the best tools and equipment on the job site. And now Tallman is going to save you some money on their Wow Wednesday promotion. Every Wednesday, Tallman is going to offer an exclusive deal on some of their best tools for linemen on the market. These deals are very limited, so you need to get on them early. The deal is different every week, so be sure to follow Tallman Equipment on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to be the first to know when the deal is going to be. If you're looking for a lineman's tools and equipment in Canada, look no further than LineStar Utility Supply. LineStar's got you covered from coast to coast with all the gear that you need. They also offer warranty and repair facilities at each location. LineStar has now become a stocking distributor for Working Athlete products, so you can head on over directly to linestar.ca to get some of that Working Athlete goodness. So check them out at linestar.ca. David, I'm stoked to see you again. It's really nice to see you. It was a great conversation we had on your show, and I'm excited that you have the time to spend with me today on Powerline Podcast. So welcome to Powerline Podcast, and it's great to see you again.
Right on, dude. Yes, thank you so much. You know what I mean? I appreciate you bringing me on your platform. You're doing wonderful things, and this is an honor to be on here, dude. Thank you.
Cool. Well, let's jump right into it. Where did you grow up? Where's home?
Home for me is in the mountains of northern New Mexico. I grew up there, pretty rambunctious as a child. Me and my younger brother, he passed away last year. But we grew up in the mountains just hunting and fishing and stuff like that. My dad was a blue collar worker. He put in 29 years at the city of Santa Fe. He always worked hard, that was one thing he taught us, between working there at his blue collar job and going and picking up bales. He always taught us really good work ethic. That's something that really stuck with us as children, but graduated from Santa Fe High School. I wrestled, I played football, you name it. We boxed. I was in karate, we're pretty active. Did it all, dude. I think back then they would have labeled me as a kid who needed Ritalin, honestly, but seriously, my parents found a way to channel all that energy that we had by putting us in sports, and I thank them for that. I really do.
So when you say you grew up in the mountains, did you have a piece of property kind of away from like rural area or in the inner city, or what was that like?
Well, we had two homes. So we had the city life, which was in Santa Fe, right? Which is a very small community. And then we had a property up in northern New Mexico in the mountains, which was another house that my parents had. And that's where we did all our ranching and stuff like that. So we spent our time through both places. The schooling system where the mountains was not the greatest. So in order for us to have like a better future, my parents always had us in the schools in Santa Fe, if that made sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I grew up in rural type area. Like my brother and I, pretty much all we cared about in the summertime was where our next tank of fuel for our dirt bikes was coming from. Mom would kick us out in the morning and we would just hit the back 40 and be gone till dinner time. Well, we come home for lunch, a sandwich and a chocolate chip cookie or something, and then just like gone again. And it was just the best. It was the best way to grow up, just outside in the bush, just riding dirt bikes. Just we'd often just ditch our bikes too and just go exploring as well, just off in the bush, picking up sticks and building forts and just like whatever. But we were gone and we were just allowed to do that. Like it almost seems weird to think of now because I really don't know too many other kids that grow up like that other than where I'm from. But I'm in the city now. I'm in Vancouver, and it's big city. And anybody I know or meet down here, I couldn't imagine them allowing their kids to do what we did.
Yeah, no, I agree with you now. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Like, you know, just when you're talking about, yeah, you know, when you're talking about how you and your brother, that brought a memory to me. I remember one time, you know, cause we have a mountain, we're surrounded by mountains. We got a river running through our property. Right. And, me and my brother decide to go to the waterfalls. So we have to climb this mountain, you know, I'm like 13, my brother's like 10. And we're just going and we're climbing over this mountain. And all of a sudden we run into this field and it's someone's grow. Okay. You know, it's a marijuana. You know what I mean? And these plants are like 3 feet taller than we are. And I remember going in there and just seeing all kinds of hoses and everything, you know, going for miles and everything. And I look at my younger brother and he looks at me and we have to back out of there. You know what I mean? We're like, holy smokes, you know, we need to get out of here. You know, we see little tents and stuff like that, but that's the beauty of exploration. You know what I mean? We got to see that. You know what I mean? This was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I came around the corner one day, we were riding our bikes and come blasting around this corner, big old black bear, mama black bear. I almost ran right into it. 3 cubs. She just like stood there. I'm probably 5 feet away from this big black bear, 3 cubs. My brother comes around the corner. Our 2 friends come around the corner. And it's so cool because like, I don't know, you'd think like a super dangerous situation probably was, but
oh yeah,
just that experience of like sitting there on the road 5 feet away from a big black bear and you're like 9 years old. I don't know, just the kids grow up different these days. And I think they need a little bit more of that. I think they definitely need a little bit more of that. A little bit more of that, like get out into the bush, right? Like get out there and learn some of these skills, like especially for young men, like get out there and learn some of these, I don't know, manly skills that I think we're losing these hands-on things, right? That's the way I grew up and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. I agree with you, man. I mean, it is something that's being lost. You know what I mean? Right now they're saying more than ever, the generation is, you know, we did a podcast, you know, earlier that talked about how kids are spending an average of 8 to 9 hours on social media, on devices and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind because growing up as a child, if we had to stay inside, that was a punishment, dude. Seriously, that was a punishment. It's like clean your room. You know what I mean? Like, no, I want to go outside and, you know, whatever, sharpen sticks or, you know, go, you know, anything
but stay inside.
I got a cool story for you, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. One time we went camping. Okay. And my dad had just bought us these Benjamin 22 caliber pellet guns. Okay. So me and my younger brother we're in the forest and we find this huge, big old evergreen that lightning had struck. White. It was beautiful. Okay. Had nothing growing on it. It was just solid white, just, you know, this old tree. So lo and behold, what do me and my brother do with new pelicans? You know what I mean? We're out there, we're shooting squirrels, birds, whatever we could kill. So we decide to decorate this tree. So we had all these corpses all around this tree. I mean, there has got to be like Man, Peter would have freaked out on that. You know what I mean? But I mean, we decorated this huge tree. And I remember my dad, you know, he went to go chop some wood or whatever. And he comes back and he has this blank look on his face. And he's like, Elaine, come here. And my mom's like, what's going on? He's like, do you know what your boys did? It was always your boys when we were in trouble. You know what I mean? Do you know what your boys just did? You know? But he showed her and she's like, oh my gosh, you know, why did you guys do that? And we're just like, I don't know, you know what I mean? But that's what boys do. That's what men do. You know what I mean? We go and explore. And going back to the topic, I think that's what's missing. You know, and I'm not necessarily saying that you need to go out there and kill all kinds of animals and stuff like that, like we did, but that exploration, you know what I mean? That adventure. I mean, as men, we have that sense of adventure in us and we need to explore that. We need a place where we can develop that. And I think that's where this ties into the trades that we go into, like line work. You know what I mean? It's that type of personality. You know what I mean? We're exploring. We're always looking for new things. I don't know how awesome it was for me to be a lineman and see something that I never saw and be like, holy smokes, we pulled that off. You know what I mean? Right on. You know what I mean? And let me add that to my arsenal. You know what I mean? 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Excuse me. You know what I mean? But
I think it's making it's creating soft men. And it's not like men can't be a little softer. And that's not what I'm trying to say. Cause I think a lot of guys can learn how to be a little bit softer, but it's creating this real sense of like dudes just don't know how to do basic dude stuff anymore. Like they don't know how to chop wood, work with their hands, like just do basic mechanical things. Like they just don't do it anymore. It's crazy. It's going a weird direction. And I don't know, we need to spin that boat around or get the best of both worlds, so to say, right? You can be in touch with that, whatever, feminine side, but you also need to harden up a little bit. We're getting a little too soft in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. You need that fine balance, dude. I mean, there's proven facts that say if you're too hard on your sons, that's one of the reasons what pushes them towards feminism. Okay. Now, if you're too soft with your child and you're always coddling him and you're always babying him and putting him in dresses and stuff like that, that's another way that tends to contribute to some of these lifestyles later on in life. You know what I mean? And we got to find that balance, you know, as fathers. You know, one of the things that I like that you talk about is, yes, you know, we as fathers, we tend to, we've grown up in this society where, you know, we can't show our feelings, right? Where we're taught, rub some dirt on it. It's not okay to cry. You know what I mean? Get up and do it. You know what I mean? And I agree with you in that we need to start saying it's okay. It's okay to have these emotions. These emotions are very real and you need to be in touch with them. That'll make you a whole person. Yeah. Instead of closed off. You know what I mean?
I just did a little podcast, a little solo podcast, and I used a quote from Jordan Peterson about, he talked about, I'll probably botch the quote here now, but he talked about being a monster and how men especially, but women too, you need to be in touch with that inner monster, but don't be a monster to other people. But you need to know that that's a part of you and that's a part of you as a human, and be in touch with that, but don't necessarily become a monster to others. But I thought it was cool, like thing to wrap your head around, like know that is within you as a human. Like, you know, there's been incredible monsters on this planet and they are human beings, just like you're a human being, that you're capable of that, but controlling it is the main thing. We need to teach our kids these things though.
Yes, absolutely. And teaching these are life lessons, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We
need to definitely think differently and live differently than what culture says. You know, we got to change that culture, you know, because society is telling our children now that this is okay. This is okay. This is okay. Well, when are we going to step into that gap and be like, hey, you know, this is okay. We got to be that moral compass for our children, right? Mm-hmm. One of the quotes I heard the other day is, what walks in fathers runs in sons. And I love that quote, dude, because it's so true. I mean, it goes even to a biblical standpoint where the sins of the father pass on to the sons, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The sins of iniquities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, we are that example. We are that moral standard. So what are we doing in our lives that they're watching?
It's a great question.
It's
a great question. You're ex-military, correct?
Yes.
What branch?
I was in the Navy. I was a combat medic.
Oh,
Yeah.
When did you join?
I joined in 97. Yeah, I joined in 97. Long time ago.
walk us through a little bit of that history. Like, how long did you serve for? Kind of a bit of your combat past.
Yeah. Well, I got out in 01. Okay. When I was in, it was we called it the dry years. Okay. It was practice for the big game, and the big game never came.
Roger.
What led me to that though was, when I was in high school, I was 14 years old, and I got stabbed by a 21-year-old. Okay. And I was one of the first high school stabbings, and that kind of changed my whole perspective on life. I became very, very angry. I didn't know how to trust anybody. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I could defend myself, and I felt like a failure. So I wanted to do something more with my life. Prior to that, I never even thought about going to the military. I always wanted to go to college and do something great. One of the things my dad always told me is, use your mind, not your back, So lo and behold, that kind of changed my whole trajectory. So I got upset and I hated people. I'll be honest. You know what I mean? I really, really started to hate people, and I wanted to go to the military, and I wanted to kill people, plain and simple. So I went into the military, was in there in 97 through 01. Economy was great. So I decided to get out and, put that GI Bill to work, for me. So I got out of the military, and I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do? One of my good friends was good friends with a guy from Blackwater Security. He had just got out as well. He was having a hard time transitioning, like a lot of people do that come out of the military. Yeah. So we were deciding to see if we were going to go and do some security work overseas, brought me a big old pamphlet about 4 inches thick, all kinds of stuff, waivers and stuff that we had to sign. And when I was doing that, I ran into my wife, and I was like, starting to really like this girl, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, what else can I do? You know what I mean? I'll try computer networking, whatever, So I actually went to school for that. I got a degree. Once I got a degree, I started working, we got married. And then I realized that I was not cut out for computer work at all. You know what I mean? It absolutely sucked. I mean, my back hurt, dude. I was running like 5 miles a day. I was swimming 2 miles, working out, and I was still getting bat fat. You know what I mean? I was getting chunky. I'm like, what the hell, So it really, really sucked. And I was really, really depressed at that time. So I remember going to drop off some money to my younger brother, and he pulls up in this big old bucket truck, 4-wheel drive bucket truck, big truck to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gets out, he has this cowboy hat on, and I'm like, gosh darn, dude. I was like, you drive that? And he's like, yeah. I was like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a lineman, bro. I'm like, what do you mean lineman? Like football? What? And he's like, no, man. He's like, dude, I work on power lines. He's like, your whole family are linemen. You didn't know this? And I'm like, no, I didn't know. You know what I mean? And come to find out, yeah, I had an uncle who owned his own power line construction company. You know what I mean? I have several cousins that are linemen. You know what I mean? And, here I am with this degree, right? I have this degree, and I'm barely scraping by. I'm making $20 an hour at the time, and with a degree. And, I just bought my new house and everything else. My wife, she's taking care of the baby at the house. And here's this kid who's making 70, 80 grand at the time. You know what I mean? And I'm like, how in the world are you doing this? I'm making 40 grand. And how I need to look into this. You know what I mean? So I did. I looked into it. I waited a year to get in. Back then, the selection process to become a lineman was you went in front of a board of guys, and they're all cowboy looking dudes, and they would ask you, have you worked on a ranch? And I'm like, yeah, I grew up on a ranch. Yeah. He's like, you know how to use a shovel? Yeah. Have you ever put up fences? Yeah. Okay. We're going to teach you aerial fencing. I'm like, oh, come back, So I left, gave it a year. And then all of a sudden I get this call, dude. And I still remember the guy, he passed away now, but he's like, hey, you're going to work for Sturgeon Electric next week. I'm like, oh, well, can I get 2 weeks? He's like, do you want this job or not? You know what I mean? Like,
welcome to line work.
Exactly. I was like, well, do I get a company vehicle? I mean, it's out of town, and he looked, he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, you have a vehicle? Yeah. He's like, you got gloves? Yeah. That's all you need. Get your ass there. See you at 7:00. You know what I mean? And excuse my language, but so I went, and that was my transition from military to computers to being a lineman. You know what I mean? It kind of went full circle. You know what I mean? Crazy.
That's cool. That's a cool way. Like, you talk about the selection process.
Mm-hmm.
I think you kind of I think we need to get back to that sort of system again. It's one thing I've noticed from instructing young men so far, is that would have been really good. That whole selection process of who gets to actually get a shot at trying this trade or not it's always kind of interested me, like the different ways that it happens. For some people, it's just, yeah, all right, good enough. Come on. Let's try you out tomorrow. And then you're in, but it doesn't necessarily, you're not necessarily the right fit for the trade, and the trade's not the right fit for you. That selection process, I think a lot of work could be done on it, is probably what I'm trying to get at, is a lot of work could be done on that selection process. It's a little too wish-washy from what I've seen.
Yeah. And going back to that selection, I mean, this was, a while back. Okay. These are some of the old guys. These are the old line hands, you know what I mean? Where men were men and sheep were nervous. You know what I mean? A lot of those, I think there's only one lineman I still know that's around, that I grew up with, you know what I mean? As far as, linemen for me, the rest are either passed away or retired, and these guys were just something else. Yeah. They taught you, but at the same token, they expected a lot out of you. There was there was 3 things that they would teach you. Okay. First time, they'd show you. And this is the way we learned. They'd show you something the first time. Second time, they'd let you do it. Third time, you better have mastered it or you're down the road. That's it. They didn't have time to play around. When I got in, there was a lot of reconductors going on. So you need to catch up, and I remember just being with one of the linemen I had, and we're working out in West Texas, and a great lineman. I mean, great dude. He'd go spread, because we're setting hot poles, real simple line work, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he'd go spread the fall. He'd go look at the ties. He'd take us to go look at the ties, obviously, to make sure we're looking at, and we knew what we're looking at before we started spreading, see if anything would go bad on us, right? And that's one thing he always taught us, is I'll look up and live. And that means so many different things in this trade, and in life. So we'd be looking up, make sure the ties were okay, that they're going to hold when we spread, a structural way or whatever. So we'd come back. Next thing you know, he'd go spread. I would have to frame. I would frame a whole pole by myself. These were poles that were not pre-drilled. So I had to know the exact specs. I still remember the specs, you know what I mean? 4, 6, 9, 20 and a quarter, you know what I mean? And these were all after protection. So the neutral's up on top. Okay. It was like a static, Yep. So I had to know how to do that. I had to know how to stretch it out myself, and with no help. This is me drilling everything, rolling it over. And he showed me one time, and he's like, if you can't get this, I don't need you. We're already short as it is. You know what I mean? So I would have to frame that out. Dude, I'd frame it. He'd go spread. He'd come back. He'd be drilling the holes. I had to be done with that pole by the time he was ready to set that pole. and then we'd set the pole and then we'd fly up and then we'd tie it in and we'd go to the next one. You know what I mean? And you don't see that anymore. You know what I mean? With all this new equipment, now they have this gasoline or this electric saw from Milwaukee. It's badass. I've used it before, you know what I mean? But, all this stuff that they're coming out with kind of, I don't know if it's making people softer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know how many linemen I've talked to where when we're doing work on open wire secondary and I'm like, oh, you got the MD6, the bones, the clackers, and they're looking at like, what's that?
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean? What's that?
Drill. Yeah. The hydraulic impact.
Yeah, remember? Dude. Yeah. I'm like, come on. I'm like, really? You never used bones before? And he's like, no, man. What the hell is that? I'm like, gosh darn, dude. Yeah. He's like, you don't have one of them candlesticks, that crush the side-by-sides, the H-taps? I'm like, gosh. I was like, yeah, no, we got one, but it's probably on the other truck or whatever. You know what I mean? You never use these?
That's why my elbows
I don't know. It just blows my mind away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why my freaking elbows are sticking out like Pumpkinhead over here. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that creates a level of grit in a man, honestly. Yeah. I do.
I would definitely agree with you on that. And I don't understand how, well, see with linemen, it takes linemen to pick. So a lineman could look at anybody, say for selection, right? They can look at anybody and with a few simple questions, like you said, like, have you worked on a ranch? Have you put up fence before? Like within 3 questions, that guy knew whether you had at least a little bit of what it takes. Mm-hmm. But it takes a lineman to ask those questions. And they have too many people, I believe, that just aren't directly from the trade, like linemen. And, picking these questions, whatever questions they are, these methods of assessing people to see if they're right for the trade or not. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it takes a lineman to do it. I just firmly believe that, but it takes the right lineman to ask those questions, because you can definitely go down a road that's not good with that as well. And, start getting off in the weeds with it. But I don't know what the answer is, but I just, some places are doing it right, but I would bet that those places that are doing it right, the people asking the questions are linemen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need more seasoned linemen, mm-hmm. to step up in those positions that you're talking about. A lot of line hands don't want to. You know what I mean? They're looking towards retirement. I've been fortunate enough to work construction. I've worked at co-ops and I've worked at utility. So I've seen all 3 different things, and one of the things that they all tend to say is, I don't got time. These kids, this generation doesn't want to learn. Some of the older guys at the utility were like, you know what? I just want to retire. They don't listen to me anyways. So where did the respect leave? You know what I mean? Where did that you talked about it on our podcast about respecting. You know what I mean? Where did we lose that respect between apprenticeship, mastery, and lineman status? You know what I mean? To where they question us, you know what I mean? To where we feel as linemen that we can't communicate to these kids, that they're not going to listen to us,
I think we have no one to blame but ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is the root of all problems, right? Whatever problem you have, no matter what it is a leadership problem. So if you as a leader are saying, oh, these kids just don't listen to me, that's your problem. Mm-hmm. That's your problem. You're doing something wrong.
Yes, I agree.
It's you. You have to look at yourself. You have to. And you have to accept that it's you and it's your issue. Yeah, there's a lot of spoiled brats out there that are coming into the trade mm-hmm. with complete lack of respect, but that's on us. That it goes right to the selection, mm-hmm. right? It goes to the selection, and then it goes everything after that selection. when they're in the trade, how are they being treated? How are they being treated? How are you treating them?
Mm-hmm.
It's us. It's on us.
100%. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100% on that as well. When you were saying that, I just remember something that my buddy Gene Glaudeman talked about. He talked about when he was growing up, they told him, you work like a man, we'll treat you like a man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We don't have time for babies. We don't have time to be holding hands. This is a man's trade.
Yeah.
For real. You know what I mean? And yeah, obviously no one's born with, with their hooks on coming out their mom, you know what I mean? Where your mom's got scars down her legs because I came out with my hooks on, baby. You know what I mean? I was born a lineman. No, no, you know what I mean? We weren't born with this knowledge, but as linemen, we're needing to pass on the wisdom that we have, what we've taught, you know what I mean? And glean it, even with childhood, even with our parents, you know what I mean? Obviously we weren't born with a blueprint as well. I'm going to bring this back to that. Okay. We weren't born with the blueprint on how to raise our children. We have these fathers who weren't perfect. Their father wasn't perfect. You know what I mean? So we take the good from that, we glean it, and we get rid of the bad. And hopefully we raise a better person of us. How many times have you been told in this trade, right? As linemen, we want our apprentices to be better than we ever were. It's the same thing with our kids, dude.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this then. You come from the service, you go from the service, short period of time in computer stuff, and then you enter line work, which is, you definitely must have, we didn't talk about this a lot, but you must have spent a lot of time on the road. And it sounds like you were starting a family at that time as well. Like how much have you worked in the field, on the road, in the field, working a tradesman's hours in the field and have a family? What advice, not even necessarily advice, like what did you do or what have you done to show up for your kids and your family? What advice can you give these guys that are still putting in time in the field, but want to show up for their kid and want to pass these things down to their children, but they aren't with them every day? Like, dude, I'm still in it. I just did 43 days away from my kids, 43 days on the road. Again, still, I'm 40 years old, still in line work, still doing these big shifts. That's 43 days of, I don't know, trying to pass down lessons over FaceTime. Like FaceTime's great, but they're not going to learn these things. I'm just hoping that I'm leading by example. I'm doing things by example, and every conversation I do have with them is an important conversation. But what are some things? I don't know. I'm curious to pick your brain on this a little bit.
Well, what led me to doing what I'm doing now, obviously I made tons of mistakes. You know what I mean? I went on the road, I wanted to try to, I made a mistake that every tradesman on the road does. You know what I mean? We try to buy our love and our time that we're missing with our children with stuff, because we have the ability, we make better than most people as linemen, right? We're blessed in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started trying to buy that time that was gone. And for me, that created this void, you know what I mean? Which I always talk about, it created this distance, you know what I mean? To even to the point where when I would get home, I had the distant dad syndrome, where I didn't even know how to interact with my kids because you're spending time with a bunch of men all the time. You know what I mean? So I kind of got estranged with my kids, and vice versa. My kids too were like, they got comfortable with me being gone. They're like, oh, when's dad leaving? You know what I mean? I started to see those things and I didn't really like it. So I had to make a choice for me. You know what I mean? Obviously I was forced in that choice because, my wife in 2018, she got really, really sick. Christmas Day, her heart stopped, and we had to go to the emergency room, and I had to take off. I had already been pushing a crew in El Paso, Texas for 3 years with a good friend of mine. And I was making great money and everything, having a good time down there. And that happened, and I couldn't return back to work because we didn't know what was plaguing my wife at the time. It was super scary. You know what I mean? Here's this woman, this rock, this line wife who's taking care of our farm, because I have a bunch of chickens and, you know, I got property and everything like that. She's taking care of my children. She's taking care of the home. She's chopping wood. She's doing all these things, you know what I mean? Making kindling, you know, breaking ice for all the animals, you know, doing all these great things, which I commend her for, you know what I mean? And here she's sick, so she's completely down. And now I got to come home and pick up the pieces. And I don't know how to get out of that position. I'm like, man, I can't return back to work, Rodney. I was like, my wife almost died. And like every good foreman, he had to, or GF, he had to look at it and be like, look, dude, if you can't work, you don't eat. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. You know, I'll give you, you know, try to come back by the 7th. If you can't, I got to replace you. And I said, okay. And I couldn't come back. So it was during that transition, Ryan, where I started seeing the negatives that came with me being on the road. I mean, from even my middle boy, Lucas, he developed a speech impediment. Okay. He was having trouble talking and stuff like that. And he would say like weird words, you know, and I'm like, what the heck's going on here? You know? And even our third son, my last baby, Kemper, he had developed this condition to where he was allergic to anything my wife ate was being passed down through her milk, and he was allergic to that. So he couldn't eat nothing. So his skin literally looked like someone had thrown some acid on him. Oh. And he would scream and scream and scream. And, you know, here I am, you know, putting my wife through all this stress while I'm over working on an ice storm in Oklahoma. And she's calling me saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. You know what I mean? To where it developed all these anxieties in her, you know what I mean? To where finally the breaking point was when she got bit by this tick and got Lyme disease. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, you know, if this isn't a sign already that I'm not where I'm supposed to be, you know, I don't know what is, you know what I mean? Here, my son had this, all these different things are happening. You know what I mean? I'm still on the road. At what point in time am I going to have to freaking open up and try to at least come home and work at a utility? And I tried the utility thing, and because of pride, because of ego, because of whatever, I couldn't handle the utility. You know what I mean? Their mindset's different, especially growing up as a construction lineman. We have a different mindset than they do. Yeah. You know, and I don't really want to get too much into that. Anybody's worked at utility construction, you know, it's two different things.
Everyone understands. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I came to this whole thing. So back to your question, to answer it, what do I do now? And what do I suggest to fathers out there? I'm not going to tell you to stop working, because that's not what we're at about the Show Up Dad. You got to provide, dude. But I do want you guys to know that you're more than just a paycheck or provider for that home. Okay. You need to be intentional with your kids. You know, like what you said, you're on Zoom. Back in the day, we didn't have all these devices. I mean, FaceTime was just barely coming out. You know what I mean? So I try to make it as much time to FaceTime my wife and the children, to pray with them. You know what I mean? I don't know how many linemen can contest that they used to see me praying in the morning before they went to school, or wishing my daughter a good day before she went off, or whatever. You know what I mean? Even putting the kids down at night to pray with them. You know what I mean? Just being intentional. You know what I mean? And then making that quality time count. This is where I made a mistake. When I would come home, as men, we compartmentalize. So I was dealing with internal issues that I couldn't even understand at the time. You know what I mean? I was dealing with this emotion of leaving my family and seeing all these things that were happening in my family, but I couldn't wrap my brain around it. So it would make me angry. So as compartmentalized, so I would start trying to get away from my family, even though I was home and I was needing to make that time with my family. My family wanted my attention. I needed to get away from them, because it was a self-defense mechanism for me not to react in a negative way with them and start yelling at them and cause more damage that I was already creating. Right. So I started getting away from it, separating myself. I started, you know, working on the yard. I'd come home and, you know, after a month being gone, I'd be like, man, the fence needs to be fixed. I need to do this. I need to replant the field. You know what I mean? Just different things I just really dive myself into after working all these hours. I was putting in more hours at the house too, you know what I mean? And getting away from the kids, you know?
Dude, I think there's a large amount of us that can completely relate to what you're saying right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? That's what we're trying to help fathers out there do. It's to see is we need to be intentional with our kids. You know, I get it. You know what I mean? Stuff that's happened in the past, all these different things that's happened to us that have shaped our lives. Well, let's glean from that. Don't hold on to that past, bro. You know, let's use the car analogy. Okay. You have this great big window in front of you that you drive through, your front window, right? It's clear. You could see. Hopefully it's clear. You know what I mean? If not, get your apprentice to clean the windshield. You know what I mean? Hopefully it's clear. And then you have this rear view mirror, right? It's small for a reason because you're never meant to go forward looking through that little rear view mirror. You know what I mean? It's meant to glance at it and learn from your past and go forward.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, be intentional. That's the best advice I can give is be intentional and be who you say you are. If you tell your kids, don't do what I say, do what I do, or don't do what I, how's the saying? Do what I say, don't do what I do. You know what I mean? We're sending mixed messages to our children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're going to grow up confused and they're going to be like, well, daddy used to do this, but the rule says this. You know what I mean?
I like be intentional. That's great. It's no matter like, cause you can translate that to no matter what you're doing.
Yes.
You know, like no matter whether it's a FaceTime call, Zoom call, or whether you're actually at home with them, just be intentional with that time, you know, be there,
Absolutely.
Be present with them. I like, I've been trying to get my kids because they're all their own little personalities now, but try to involve them as much as I can with what I'm doing. But that dude, that's an exercise in patience for sure. As a father, especially as like I don't know, as a lineman or a tradesman, like you're all about production and the least moves possible. And when you bring your children into it, it definitely, the process gets dragged out and it's an exercise in patience, but I think that there's like a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value.
And you know, it's absolutely. And you know what the really cool thing is too, that I've learned recently. I was talking to a psychologist and Michael Green Institute. Okay. And he was talking about how men, our brains are different from women, right? One part of our brain, right? It goes from seeing pictures to adding those to words, you know what I mean? One part of our brain. The other part is spatial, okay? So a lot of times when you ask a son, what do you remember about your father? The first thing that goes to his brain is, well, I remember my dad used to throw the ball with me. And the reason he remembers that is because that spatial part of his brain was seeing movement. And that's how God created us, right? To work, to move, to use our hands, to create. You know what I mean? One of the key words in recreation is recreate. Okay, so God created us to have these things where we can recreate. That's why when, as tradesmen, we take pride in our work. You know what I mean? We square up your washers and stuff like that. You know, diamonds are for girls, whatever. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about as a lineman. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But when we get back to that, in those moments we can use to work with our child to really capture his heart, you know, so when his hands are busy, he's actually listening to us. So when we're showing him how to use the wrench the correct way, you'll be surprised how many guys don't know how to use a crescent wrench.
Oh man.
Right way. You know what I mean? So when we're showing these life skills, like we're talking about earlier, you could have a conversation with your son, ask him his interests. That's being intentional. You know what I mean? What do you like? What do you want to be when you grow up, son? You know what I mean? And you'll be surprised how much they open up to you.
Yeah.
You know, now for daughters, that's something different. Daughters, you got to have their heart. They're completely different. Little girls need to know you love them. That every word, I mean, they literally hang on your every word. Yeah. I mean, if you say anything negative, holy smokes, dude, it just totally just destroys them and you'll see them melt. You know what I mean? There's a great book out there by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. We did a giveaway about it. It's called Love and Respect. And that translates back into showing your daughter love to where they'll show you respect. You know what I mean? It's this crazy cycle, you know what I mean? And it's such a great book. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. But yeah, just be intentional, man. Be really intentional. Use those times like we talked about to really get them engaged, and communication, dude.
Yeah.
Communication is absolutely key because they don't know how to communicate. So they're looking to you to see how you communicate. One of the things we've been doing is for teenagers, we're doing 5 days for teenagers on how to deal with some of the issues that they have. You know what I mean? One of them was like rolling eyes, slamming doors and stuff like that. The whole message of that thing that I've learned is that it's all about communication. Our children don't know how to communicate, so they roll their eyes. You know what I mean? And what happens with us? We get upset. They start slamming stuff. It's because they can't communicate what they're feeling. So where are they going to learn that communication? They're going to learn that from their father. That was one of the reasons. And I tie this back to what I was talking about my son. I learned that part of the way a child develops is so essential that a father needs to be there when they're in those early stages, because they learn how to speak from us, how to communicate. And that's the importance of us being around. I know we can't be there 24/7, but be intentional. When you're there, be there.
I like what you're saying about communication. This reminds me of something that I've been testing lately. So I've been doing this, just letting my kids, my boys, especially because they're older, they're 16 and 14. My little girl's only 6, so it's a little more difficult with her, but I'll text the boys, just random stuff throughout the day, just that I'm doing, like just trying to communicate just like kind of what I'm up to. Like, even if they don't respond or say anything back or whatever, I'll just, hey, I'm heading here, I'm doing this, or I just been giving them more information, like trying to communicate with them kind of what dad's up to. If they can't be with me every day, at least I'm kind of just letting them know what I'm up to, or I'll let them know in a text or whatever. Hey, guys, thinking about you, had a busy day. But just so you know, I love you. I've been thinking about you. And if I haven't called in a couple of days, it's because, I've been crazy busy, and then I'll get into just a little bit of detail with what I've been up to. But I think that, I haven't talked to them about it, but I think that they appreciate it. I think that it's doing something, it's communicating with them, kind of what dad's up to.
No, and I agree with you. You're making them steps. You're the adult. Okay. Being a father is for adults. You know what I mean? And, you got to be the adult in there. So you got to make that first step. You know what I mean? And you're absolutely doing that. You're making those first steps to communicate. And it may not seem like you're making headway, but it is. I mean, you are bridging that gap to say, hey, look, this is what dad's doing. I'm thinking about you, especially for daughters. They need to know you're thinking about them.
Yeah.
Boys, they're just waiting for you to come home and throw the ball with them or wrestle them or, do whatever you got to do. You know what I mean? Boys are different, but for our daughters, dude, they need to know that they're on your mind.
Yeah.
Consistently. If not, they're going to go looking for what you didn't give them. Someone else.
All right. Done. Do it. It's happening more. That's great advice. I think this is a good segue to let you share about your nonprofit, what you got going on with the podcast, your mission here. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we are a nonprofit organization. We are filed for a 501(c)(3). That should be getting back to us any week now. We kind of got hosed because of COVID, like everybody, the rest of the world. So we're waiting on that. We got our EIN and everything like that. So the podcast is there just to help fathers. Everything's free. We have this new, we teamed up with the National Father Initiative, which is a highly recognized father program. And what they do is they put out all this great content and stuff like that we can use. That's free. Obviously, we got to purchase it through our nonprofit, but we give it to you guys as free, just added value to fathers. Cause we're not, you know what I mean? Fatherhood, you shouldn't have to pay for this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our goal is to make sure you become the best father that you possibly can, dude. Cause it is. I mean, it's something that's attainable. You know what I mean? Are we perfect? No, no one ever reaches that level of mastery. You know what I mean? But hey, man, you can do it. You can be a better father, you know, if you want to put that time in. So we have this Fathering in 15 program, which totally free. It's on our website, www.theshowupdadfoundation.org. You can find it there. You can find it on my link tree on Instagram on the Show Up Dad Foundation as well. It's 15 minutes, 15 different topics. It's highly engageable content. You can access it from anywhere. It doesn't take a long time, so there's really no excuse, and it really questions you. I mean, it really does. I mean, it's great. I mean, if you haven't tried it, I suggest you check it out, dude, because it's state of the art. It's amazing. Cool. You know, and it's free. You know, so we're doing that, as well as we also are looking in the process with our nonprofit, because we have a lot of property up in northern New Mexico. One of the things I wanted to do to commemorate my younger brother, who was the first Show Up Dad, which this whole thing spawned from, is he passed away last October, a day before his 39th birthday. Now, he was a journeyman lineman as well. He was a foreman. He was hunting. He had already guided 3 different hunts, and he was on his, I think it's 3rd or 4th hunt that he was on with his wife. It was a special hunt for him and his wife down in the Gilas, where they got the big Gila monsters, they call them, you know, the monster elk. Well, he went out there. He was just him and his wife. He shot a bull elk. It was in a bad area. He couldn't get his Can-Am to it. So he had to quarter it there and hike it out, you know. During that process, he told his wife that he might have pulled something because his shoulder and his chest was hurting. They didn't think anything of it. Went back to the show up. He told her, get the stuff ready. It's going to snow. He started caping the legs to put him in the cooler. And when she came out to see if he wanted a shower, because he was covered with blood, she said she saw him flipped over the elk on the trailer, dude. And he had suffered a massive heart attack, you know? So we never know. That's where I'm going with this. We never know. You know, the last conversation I had with him was, all I got is 20 more years of this work. That's it. He's on, then I could retire. He didn't have 20 more years, bro. No one is guaranteed that. So What are you going to do? What legacy are you going to do? What legacy are you going to leave? Yeah. You know? So that's what we're doing with this nonprofit. We're going to get this property. We're going to set it up to where fathers can go and just get away from the rat race, you know, and get away from social media, you know, go and learn some fathering skills, you know, out there. You know, throw that ball with your kid, go fishing, be intentional, you know, get away from the distractions, you know, chop some wood, do whatever, you know what I mean? It's such an amazing place. It'd be a waste if we weren't to use it the way we plan to do with this foundation. So we'll keep you guys up to date with that. And, you know, that's what we're doing with this foundation. It's growing immensely, and it's going big, and we thank the audience for that, because I mean, this is something that's very needed for fathers.
Dude, that's such a good thing that you got going on there. I commend you for doing that. I wish you all the best in it too. I know it sounds like it's a huge success already, and you've basically just began this journey. You started it in a time that is, we really need this too right now. Really need it. So that's awesome. I can't wait to see where you go with that. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we kick off here?
No. Just fathers, just be intentional. I mean, like we talked about, I can't stress that enough. You know, be intentional with everything. And once again, I'm not telling you guys come back from the road. I mean, that's a decision you're going to have to make. At the end of the day, we all have a choice. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that. I know I couldn't, you know, at that time. I had to be forced to, like we talked about. Now, with that being said, though, be intentional with everything you do. Make those moments count. We can't get back time. So make that time that we do have intentional. Spend it with what you love, your children. Okay. They need you.
Yeah. 100%, man. Well, thank you, David, for coming on the show. Appreciate every conversation I've had with you so far. So, and all the best going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Once again, I thank you for coming on our podcast, and keep doing the good things you're doing, Ryan. You're amazing. I really liked your resume builder. I mean,
Cool.
dude, that thing's solid. I mean,
Thanks.
anybody who's looking to get ahead and just better themselves, I mean, I highly recommend your resume builder. I mean, it's such a solid thing, dude. And go check out our Fathering at 15, dude. It's free. You know what I mean? Check it out, you guys. You know, it's another tool there for you. It's like giving you the bones, or here's your Makita or whatever, you know what I mean? Use this, you know what I mean? So
use the new tools.
Like,
use the tools. They're there for you, especially free. Like, heck, man, free courses, free education is good stuff. Where else can people get a hold of you? You mentioned the website, but where else are you most active?
Well, I'm most active on Instagram, of course. We do have a group on Facebook that's very, very active that people don't get to see a lot of the stuff. You know, we have a lot of live content in there, live fathering tips that we're doing. That's where I was talking about the fathering tips as far as dealing with teenagers and you know, the drama that's associated with what they're going through puberty and stuff like that. So we have a lot of you know, great content in there, and that's called the Show Up Dad Foundation as well. It's a group on Facebook that you can find us on. Cool. And those would be the best ways. My information's on there as far as calls, you know, Calendly, anything like that. If you guys want to link up, if you guys have questions or anything like that about anything about fathering, about line work, about, you know, anything, my time's always open. I'm here to give back as much value to the community that I love as much as possible. Thank you, guys.
Awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, brother.
All right, I just want to thank David again for coming on the show. Such a beauty guy. It was such a good conversation. I highly encourage you guys to check out his content on Instagram, Facebook, as well as listen to his podcast. Of course, listen to the podcast, the Show Up Dad podcast. All right, this is the part of the show where you get to learn how you can support Powerline Podcast. Hit up powerlinepodcast.com. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, stickers, shaker cups, posters, books, all kinds of good stuff on there. All of that helps me continue to keep this thing going. So hit up powerlinepodcast.com. One of the most important things that I'm so stoked about recently is launching this course on resumes for line workers. And I know some of you union guys keep hitting me up on Instagram, like, what do the union guys need resumes for? You just sign the books, but resumes are important still to this day. It's a good exercise to go through no matter what. No matter if you just sign the books and get a call out, it'll keep you prepped for that day when you're no longer just getting signed out as a JL. You're going to be a supervisor, or you're going for some other type of position. So hit up powerlinepodcast.com, top right corner, hit the drop down. You'll see online courses, the resume courses on there. It's super cheap. You're going to get a ton of value out of it. It's about an hour's worth of content. It's going to teach you how to build a resume specifically for line workers. Get on there, check that out. Yeah, that's all from me, guys. I love you guys. Take care. You're going to start to see a lot more content from me. I've got tons of stuff in the works. So I'm super excited about it. You'll learn more about it. Pay attention. Follow me on Instagram, and I'll keep you posted. All right, guys. Thanks. Be your brother's keeper. Take care. Peace.